In this video, we're going to discuss some of the basics with the bow staff, or kun. The bow staff itself is a 6-foot weapon, and because you have two hands, it'll be broken up into thirds, with each hand coming approximately a third of the way down the bow. When we start in a relaxed position, we'll start with our right hand on its part of the bow, and it tucked up underneath our elbow and armpit this way. In order to get into a fighting guard, we'll bring the bow out slightly, bring our left hand as far up under our arm as we can reach, getting its third and then bringing it around into a fighting guard. Once again, from relaxed position, bring your left hand underneath all the way up your arm, rotate, and bring it around into a basic fighting guard. We're going to start by discussing some of the offensive bow basics that you can perform with the bow. The bow's major advantage is it has reach, so you want to be able to use techniques that emphasize that reach. So the first technique from our fighting guard that we do with the bow is called a jab. To do a jab, you're going to level out the bow to the target. For right now, if the target is here, solar plex, we're going to angle the bow slightly up on an angle. To perform the jab, you're going to use the front hand to basically guide and aim the bow, and the back hand is going to push the bow and twist it up on the angle and then back. Again, if we see that from the side, the bow is up on the angle towards the target. We use the back hand then to give it power, twist the bow up, and pull it back. And that's our basic jab. For our basic thrust, it's a similar motion, except we're not going to actually let the bow slide. See, in the jab, we allow the bow to slide through that front hand, and the front hand guides its direction. With the thrust, it's a similar motion coming forward, but both hands are going to be used working together to achieve the thrust. So from your basic fighting guard, you aim the bow at its target, and then you bring both hands from here out together and twist the bow, and then pull back. The entire motion is the thrust. So again, from here, you're going to use both hands to rotate the bow in and then back. Okay, demonstrating that from the side. You start your fighting guard, you pull it back here, twist out, and then back. The next strike that we're going to learn is the head strike. So you're going to see me shuffle my feet so I can straighten my hips out and bring the front hand up to my shoulder, basically touching my chest right by the shoulder. So I'm going to shuffle here and touch this way. As I come down for the head strike, I want the palm on top of the bow. So I'm going to use both hands in a push-pull motion, and I'm going to rotate that top hand down to the top of the head and then back to guard. So once again, shuffle up, bring my hand towards my shoulder this way, and I twist down on top of the head so that my palm is on top, and then back to guard. The next strike is very similar, and it's called a neck strike. So I'm still going to bring the bow up towards my shoulder, but instead of coming down to the top of the head, as I shuffle up, I'm going to bring it to the side of my shoulder and then aim right towards their neck or ear. Again, I bring it back, and I use both hands in a push-pull motion into the side of the neck, and then back. The next strike is going to be a middle or side strike. I'm going to shuffle up, and I'm going to, as I bring the bow around to set it up, I'm going to touch just the outside of my arm here, and then I'm going to aim towards the upper rib cage. So I come side strike across this way, and then back to guard. So once again, I shuffle up, set the bow up here, and then use the back of the bow as the striking surface in, side strike, and back to guard. The next strike is towards the knee. So in order to strike low, as I shuffle up, I bring it back up towards my shoulder, just like I did for the head strike. Except this time, as I pull my left hand in, I'm going to rotate my right hand around to the knee, and then back to guard. Once again, I touch and I bring the butt end of the bow out, and then around, knee strike, okay, and then back. As with all my strikes, I want to reach, right? So I don't want to come in, knee strike, and keep it nice and close like this. So as you come up, reach out to the target and allow the bow to strike the knee. and then coming back to guard. The next strike that I'm going to learn is called a groin string. I'm actually going to do this right out of Seiyuchin or Shikodachi. I'm going to take a little shuffle step forward into Seiyuchin, and then I'm going to bring the bow low under the leg, come up to the groin, and a slight turn on the top, and back to guard. So once again, I shuffle up to Seiyuchin, bring the bow low and up with a little hook at the top, and then back to guard. The next strike is a reverse side strike. As I shuffle up, now the bow is going to come around. I don't want it to come above my head like a little helicopter. I actually want it to come in front of my body. So as I shuffle up, I'm going to bring the bow in front of my body and rotate it around so that the palm of my hand is behind the bow where it's striking. And I'm going to reverse side strike to this side. And then back to guard. So once again, I bring the bow around in front of me, and then I put a little kime on the end of it in a reverse side strike. And then rotate around, back to guard. That will give us a good amount of basic strikes with the bow staff. Other strikes will be done within kata and teach us some different techniques. So there are more strikes in the Isshinryu curriculum, most of which will be learned in kata. Okay, so from your fighting guard, we'll just come back to relaxed position. Now that we've shown some bow offensive techniques, we're going to move into a couple of basic defensive techniques with the bow staff. So, right from here, we'll come back up into our basic fighting guard as we demonstrated earlier. So, we're going to start off high to low, starting off with a basic head block. So, as I shuffle forward slightly, I'm going to level out the bow here, not even switching my grips, just leveling out the bow from here and shooting it straight above my head. I want a good amount of blocking surface above my head, but I want a wedge at the elbows. So be very careful not to overextend the bow here where you're too high and your elbows are locked, because another bow coming down would be too strong. But make sure you're not wedged too low where it's not above your head and someone here would hit you right in the head. Okay, so from your fighting guard, just level out the bow, make sure it's above your head, but good wedge of the elbows, block, and back to guard. The next block that we're going to learn is blocking of the neck. So as we shuffle up, we come across, and this time when we did a strike, we reached out. The elbow was just slightly bent, reaching to attack the target. When you do a neck block, you're going to keep the bow closer to you and more wedge your elbow like a big letter L. So as I shuffle forward and bring this block across, this time I'm going to keep it in close and block this way. Okay, notice that my arm is more wedged, getting more blocking surface and keeping the bow closer to me. And then I step back to guard. So once again, a neck block, come around and wedge the elbow, okay, allowing the front part of the bow to be the blocking surface. And then back to guard. We can do a middle block, a basic middle block, okay, would be to keep the bow level, vertical, up and down, and then use the middle surface of the bow to block. So if I have someone coming across to strike the right side of my body, as I shuffle up, I'm just going to drop my right hand to my left hip and then use the middle of the bow to come across and wedge the elbow here to block. Okay, so one more time, from fighting guard, shuffle up, allow the front hand to go down to that hip, and then come across with the bow and wedge it in just like this, and then back to guard. Next, we're going to work on our knee block. Okay, so again, on the knee strike, I came from the shoulder and I reached out to strike my opponent's knee. Okay, if they're striking my knee, this time as I come across, I'm going to keep that in a little closer to me. Okay, notice this hand is coming across the wedge, and this bow is nice and close to my leg. Not too close where I get struck, but close enough that I can do the block. Okay, and then back to guard. So one more time, I shuffle up, I come across, block my knee, and then come back to guard. The next block is blocking the groin. So as you saw in the offensive technique where you would come up underneath and hook, I don't want that bow coming up underneath my legs. So as I come forward, I'm actually going to switch one of my grips. So right now, since my right grip is upside down, I'll switch that grip. So as I shuffle forward, I'll switch my one grip so that both hands are on top of the bow, and then I can come straight down. Okay, it's a little difficult to do this in Seisan stance, so we can drop either to a Zenkutsu or to a Seiyuchin stance. and drop it in this way. Okay, so once again, on the groin block, rotate one of the grips, shuffle forward, drop. Okay, and use your leg power to block, then switch the grip back and rotate back to guard. The next block we're going to demonstrate is what's called kakeuke, or hooking block. Okay, so this is usually done out of cat stance, although it can be done out of other dachi. Okay, but usually for a bow that's jabbing or thrusting into me this way, I want to be able to take that and redirect that surface energy. So I'm going to just shuffle back to cat stance this way, and then I'm going to just take the front of the bow, the nose of the bow, and hook motion this way. Okay? So I come back, it's a short little block, but it just moves the tip of the bow out of your way. So it's cat stance and hook. Just make sure you're curling that wrist, okay, and that the end of the bow is past your body. If you hook this way, here, and the bow is still lined up with the middle of your body, then that jab or thrust that's coming in, it's going to be redirected, but it's still going to hit you. Okay, so as you go back, just make sure that hooking motion goes past your outer shoulder. And hook here. So now, if the bow was to continue moving, it would miss me. And then back to guard. Okay. The hooking block is slightly different from the parry block. So it's also a hooking motion, but it's done with a bigger motion. So it's for someone coming in maybe a little further away, coming in with a bigger thrust, where we can kind of shuffle back, gain some distance, drop the nose of the bow low, and then make a bigger hooking motion around in this way. Okay, so it's very similar to the hooking block, just a little bit different in scope. So again, somebody's coming into me, I shuffle back a little bit, chop the nose of the bow, and make a bigger hooking motion all the way around, and back to Kamayan. So as I said with our offensive techniques, how there are additional offensive techniques that will be learned in your kata, same, there are also additional defensive techniques that you'll be learning in kata, so that there's different ways to block that were not basic, but this will give you a good set of offensive basics to practice, as well as defensive basics to practice with the bow staff.